Hello and welcome to a new episode of Everstate's Go to Master Show Season 3. We talk to RevOps and GTM leaders from some of the most successful companies today, and we learn from their unique stories. Joining us today is Wayne Chiang, Director Sales Compensation at Cribl. Wayne, thanks for joining us. Could you start by telling the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. First of all, thank you very much. I'm very honored to be invited to your podcast, and I'm looking forward to telling a little bit more. Um, Regarding myself, I've been doing sales comp for a little bit over 20 years now. I take much pride in the fact of doing sales comp because I feel that it is one of those key roles where you have to be very customer service centric. But in the meantime, you really kind of um, you can see the impact that your job does. And to me, that's where my professional accomplishments, is where I really feel I get that from. Um, I've been doing this in multiple industries. So again, I've gotten flavors from different industries, very legacy industries such as like insurance, over to like tech, and now into more like startups, SaaS companies. So I kind of hit the gambit and with regards to that.
Got it. Got it. And I think that's precisely where I'd like to start this podcast as well, right? So, from doing our own research and getting an understanding of what you've done so far, it seems to be a very unique background in terms of moving from microbiology and right now leading all the way comp strategy at top tech companies. So, how did it start? Where did you pivot into sales comp?
So interesting that you did notice my background. Um, yeah, I'd like to say that with most people and their careers, it's a journey. There's no like, it's not always as clear when you first start. Now, for myself, you're right. I started out, went and got my degree in the sciences. That's where I had a lot of my interest when I was younger. And of course, yeah, I got my degree in microbiology. And yes, I actually should point out I did and I did spend time in the biotech pharmaceutical industry for a while. I was more doing manufacturing operations side of things for a while. Um, but for myself, I found that it wasn't as satisfying to me. It's for me, I am very customer facing. I'm very much into trying to make sure that what I do has that impact. And to me, that's kind of like a fundamental trait I have when it comes to work. And so with that being said, I had opportunities to kind of move towards things that were of interest to me as I started to, progress further in my career, which was more on the database side, back end side. And again, I got my opportunity eventually to move into my first foray into sales compensation, which was at AAA Northern California. And that's where they took a chance on me and let me get into becoming a sales comp analyst over there, and the rest is history.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, must have been pretty exciting starting at a space like insurance. I'm guessing AAA is into automotive insurance, if I'm not wrong, or
Yeah, so AAA is property and casualty, which means it
property
covers
casualty.
auto as well as homeowners, and obviously AAA is known for their membership. So yeah, it's that. So their type of comp plans are very different from because some of their products that they offer are are mandatory. So using as a very basic example, people have to have auto insurance, right? If they want to drive, they have to have it.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
different than if you're in tech where you're like, well, do you want to buy, this, cloud
Yeah.
service? It's not a
Yeah.
need, it's a want type of thing. Versus there, it was always a need. So that changes the whole design aspect when it comes to insurance. So they're much more legacy based in a lot of ways. It's much more like not quota tie. It's not so much quota target based, but more of like a flat rate. Again, we'll go into that more into details if we need to, but it's a
Got it.
different,
Got it.
it's definitely different.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I think your summarization in terms of insurance being a need itself sort of puts that on the map, right? So it's not about hitting a particular target, but it's about consistently doing it, unlocking more and more different upselling opportunities and things like that. So, yeah. But did you want to add anything more to that?
No, well, like I said, to me, that's where I think it was a great opportunity because again, it was where the design was more simplistic. It's what I call simpler times because these were more like legacy type of plans or programs. And as you move over towards tech, it was more the wild frontier,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's where again we're talking about moving from on-prem now to cloud and even further along. And I know we'll talk about that later on, but that's where these plans become a lot more complex. And again, a lot more effort is needed to go into designing it. So yeah, it was a perfect foray. Got my feet wet and then slowly moving beyond.
perfect, perfect. And like you said, that just brings up my next question. Moving more into tech, right? Earlier, it used to be mainly a seed-based or a license-based business model where it's just you sell so much, you get so much money, and then there's a percentage commissions, and then it slowly moved into usage-based, consumption-based, and right now you see AI coming in a lot more. So how do you think businesses are adapting in general to uh, having compensation that's very connected to the business model, and what steps do you think uh, sales comp functions should take in general?
Okay. So I think you've really kind of hit the head of that nail, as a saying goes, with regards to, what the business model is. With regards to tech, yes, I've seen, and I spent my time, I've seen when we moved away from hardware and on-prem to really going into software. And now beyond software, we're moving towards more consumption based because as you said, there's that alignment that the business needs are. Now, fundamentally, when it comes to sales compensation programs, is really the vehicle in which a company tries to um, develop, their go-to-market strategy to actual, sales driven behavior. So yes, depending on what the needs of the company, if they move away, to me, a great example back in the day would be like, yeah, you join a startup company. It's really about hyper growth. They're just trying to drive it. So their plans are very much driven towards maybe, you know, ARR, or something very basic. Like I said, revenue, then basically really into like gross ARR, so it's not even just net new, it's gross, and stuff. So it's all about driving, let's just get new logos all the time and stuff. As a company matures, we have to always adapt. And so you're right. Then a company gets to a certain point, they're like, no, we now are looking for quality in terms of our customer base and our logos. And so that's where then we move towards more like net new. And then further along, at that point, we're like, okay, we're selling it, but we also need to figure out, you know, how can we make ensure that there is stickiness, right?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
it's about stickiness at that point. And again, that's where we're talking then about consumption. So this is to me just like a natural progression in terms of a company's business model and subsequently where, the plans have to kind of align with.
I think that makes perfect sense. And just one follow up within that, right? So when it comes to trickier models to deal with in sales comp, like consumption models, where like what kind of usage you calculate? Do you have a particular cutoff period or things like that, which gets very tricky in administration, and that sort of causes sometimes reps to not get an idea of, hey, how is my pay even being calculated? Where do you draw the line to say that this is the correct usage to bill based on and things like that. So how do you make sure that this transparency or visibility still remains the same as it used to be when it was volume based or seed based, even in the usage based era?
Yes. So I think it's really about communication. Okay. So obviously these when you're developing these plans, it's the end user. As long as they are as long as it's communicated clearly to them, I believe how you define consumption or usage, it really depends on the company and on the industry. Okay. Um, what it comes down to is, you know, as long as leadership, as I said, sales leadership is correctly making sure that it's very, very transparent in what they're trying to drive towards, that is then that's all that's really kind of needed. I really want to say, okay, it's I've seen consumption where it's used as a gate. I've seen it where it's used as, as literally, payment upon, per consumption and stuff. Again, either way can work and has worked, but it really does depend on communication and again, what the end result is that the company is trying to shoot for. Is it full adoption of a particular product? And if it is, how are you doing it? Are you basing it on the gate in order like how much of it is being used, or is it just based on as you go and stuff? So I've seen it both ways. There's there's no such thing as a perfect plan, so there's no really right way. It just depends on the company.
Totally fair. And so, like, we being a sales com product ourselves, we have also realized that the core lies in not just designing very well made plans, but also seeing through the rollout and communication and making sure that reps start adopting the plans and they understand it end to end, right? So I just wanted to double click on your point about the sales team or the leadership vision, and that's on one hand. On the other hand, you have sales rep motivation, and it's always going to be tricky balancing the two when you roll out and communicate these plans. So what is your playbook, or what is your recipe to roll out plans from start to finish?
Uh, yeah. Um, I always make fun of this by saying, hey, from the standpoint of sales, they'd like to say, hey, we can roll this out in 3 weeks or 4 or 3, 4
Yeah,
weeks.
yeah,
Realistically, it's more like 6 months out.
yeah,
Okay. If
yeah.
in an ideal state, I'm already starting my planning cycle as 6 months out. Now, the reason for this is because there's the it's like it's almost like a symphony. There's just a lot of different groups of different pieces that have to be involved. We're talking everybody from obviously RevOps, legal, FP&A. There's just all these different groups. Of course, sales leadership or the C levels, if depending on type of company you're at. Everybody has their say, has to be. So first thing I always try to do is to evaluate what the true impression of our current plans are. What went right, what went wrong. And again, that's usually where we talk about getting random feedback from the field, from the people who are actually on these plans, get their own impression. I usually then take the actual numbers, the year to date numbers, and start looking. Hey, people say they love this, specific spiff. Well, do the numbers support it? Were there actually a lot of payouts on this or not? Again, it's one thing where they themselves love it, but did it actually drive the right behaviors? Meaning, did we actually pay out as much as we expected to?
Yeah.
So these type
Yeah.
of things are necessary to first get a gauge about our current plan. With that, we can then get into those discussions with leadership to kind of align with the go-to-market strategy. Okay, you guys like this, great. Are we still trying to drive more partner-driven, deals? Great. If that's the case, looks like it did work. We want to continue. That might be, that is where everything aligns, and we would continue it. It may be another case where they're like, no, we offered this, but nobody ever took anything. That money
Yeah.
could be better spent elsewhere. So that's where we kind of work on developing the initial draft for the upcoming year. And from that point, we work with FP&A, making sure, our costing exercises, making sure, we're within budget. And then again, there's a few back and forth because we're tweaking it as we go and stuff like that. But as that's going on, obviously there's other aspects that have to be involved. For example, legal, we can start working on the actual document, or the wording that we're going to use, for our actual documentation. We're also talking about if we're using a solution, a SPM solution, sales performance management solution, start the work on getting the configuration on that done. So it's kind of like a big juggling act at what that point. So by the time we get to the beginning of the year, we need to have everything ready to go. So again, ideal state 6 months out.
Yeah.
Likely, It's likely more like four, yeah, if you're good.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. And let's probably dive a bit deeper into the SPM part, right? And like you said, a key aspect to this whole thing is probably the administration or like the configuration of set plans that you end up with, and making sure that things are live so that the moment the new year starts, things just start rolling along with it, regarding your tool, regarding the payouts on the right time of every month and things like that. So on that subject, when do you think is like the right time for companies to, ditch manual Excel led or spreadsheet heavy calculation into a properly built SPM product?
Well, as a sales comp professional, I would say when it's more than one person, we should already be thinking. But in an ideal state, it is about scalability. And so from that standpoint, I would say I would use as one of my prior examples or prior work. We used to use Google Sheets at one company, and yeah, it did the calculations, but sharing it is like a murderous thing because when you have 300, you know, people that are on plan, the only way to share it properly is to create 300 versions and to be able to share. That is not sustainable. That's what, where a SPM solution is so good because number one, it minimizes human error because a lot of it is automated or semi-automated in its process and its calculation. Again, that can be driven by how well of a integration you guys have with CRM or ERP and stuff like that. But again, that minimizes that or minimizes the potential human error, we'll say. But secondly, it also provides quicker responsiveness. We don't, in that case of creating 300, you know, uh,
Yeah,
uh,
copies.
individual Google sheets, there
Yeah,
is no time to do that and get that out. So in a perfect world, you should be able to provide results that are, we'll call them preliminary results. Those should then be able to allow the end user to have time to review. Was there any deals missed? Oh, why was this not calculated this way? Why was it not treated as a multi-year? Or maybe it was treated incorrectly and it is a partner-based deal. These type of things they need to have time to review. You wouldn't be able to do it if you're going to create manual reports. And of course, lastly is about confidentiality. You know, if you inadvertently share a file, okay, or it obviously can show people that others shouldn't be seeing, and that's really one of the fundamental mandates when it comes to SPN solutions. You log in, you see only yourself and your team, your direct reports. That's it. So these reasons are why a company, once you move away, and again, literally, I would say, once you get to the point where you recognize you need a sales comp department, you really should already be thinking about a SPM solution.
got it. Uh, Definitely, I think that'll be very useful for most of our listeners of this podcast. And one thing that we wanted to, talk a little bit deeper into was something that's like a hot topic in general, right? The role of AI. And we know that there are like a lot of use cases that's popping up every other day. But what we wanted to uncover through this episode was what is most practical for sales compensation in the next 1 year from AI. I mean, you could do a lot of things, but then what would you really want to do and probably spend time building or using AI for?
Okay. So, with regards to like AI agents and like you said, AI capabilities, when it comes to sales comp, Um, I think that is where the next stage or would be, which is self-service. Okay. The idea is not like a foreign idea. Historically, you're like, hey, results have been loaded, log in. And people can log in and they self-service. They log in, they can search to find if they have deals already and stuff. So again, it is already something that is a fundamental aspect of sales comp already. Okay, the idea of being able to kind of self-serve, but AI should be able to help individuals move to that next level. AI should be able, and to me, that really is about ad hoc reporting. My team spends a lot of time doing ad hoc reporting. Okay. Again, when a CRO or a VP asks for stuff, you have to give it to them. And that's understandable. They're using this to help drive decision making. Totally makes sense. But sometimes, depending on the company, your bandwidth may not be there. So the future, as I see it, would be having, these SPM solutions enable them to create their own reports in a quick and easy way. With that, then they can kind of do it or drive these decisions more effectively because they have that own capabilities. Again, it could be something that, you know, we usually offer our standard reports, stack rankings and stuff like that as an example. But maybe they want to say, hey, how many people are, and they might just list out very specific criteria. How many people are going to just miss let's extrapolate how many people are just going to miss their target number and stuff like that. But comparably, how much to OTI are they at already and stuff like that. These are type of information that again, it's a very specific type of report, but AI, I think, will allow people to have that own self-service, that own ability. And I think that's the next step. That would, of course, increase you know, um, optimization with regards to, using a solution. And again, the name of the game, as I said, is really about providing a top tier customer service experience. And I think that would be it.
Got it. I think that's perfectly summed up. And one thing before we end this episode is something that we usually, ask suggestions from our speakers, right? So, if you were to recommend 2 to 3 resources, books, could be books, blogs, or any podcast that you listen to for aspiring sales comp and RevOps professionals, what would those be?
So I always say LinkedIn is like one of the key resources because there are groups such as like Basic Pro, which is like the Bay Area incentive comp professionals, stuff like that. It's a very tight knit group, and for me, I think that you can definitely leverage these type of relationships. Once you join some of these groups, you can leverage these type of relationships to help yourself. When I, utilize a SPM solution, one of my key things I look at is who is currently using it, which companies are using it because I like to align to say, hey, are they in the same industry? Are we following their footsteps? So hopefully, if there's any quote unquote, you know, um, learning curve, they've already experienced it, and I can learn from them and hopefully sidestep these obstacles. Okay, so to me, that's kind of one of the biggest one. The other thing is, as I said, it has to do a lot with podcasts, these type of opportunities, being able to speak, with you guys and stuff like that, and listen, and then also being able to listen and hear from other ones. Again, it's key. It's really about trying to say, hey, has anybody gone through the obstacles we're currently looking at? Are there obstacles we didn't even realize, but as we're growing, hey, that's the next step. These are these type of resources that, um, as a sales comp professional, you should take full advantage of. They're bringing you in. I always say that as a company, um, they go through maturation levels or steps. Like the first one is usually, sales comp. They're just like, oh, we can just get somebody to quickly do a spreadsheet calculation. That's like the first level. Next one is when they're like, okay, we need to designate or create an actual sales comp group. And the third one is when they are looking for people with more experience to be able to build it to scale and stuff. And again, along uh, um, aligning with that type of growth is where these type of resources really kind of come into play. Where you have more of an opportunity to say, okay, we need to build a best in class sales comp group. What issues have they discovered is it truly consumption? Is that truly the new one, or are we still really in like net new ARR and stuff like that? This is kind of where, again, these resources, as you're mentioning, will provide that insight for a company and for a team.
Awesome. And if there's any one piece of advice that you would, leave to RevOps beginners or sales comp beginners on how to, navigate through and find their perfect spot in their career. So what would that be?
um, I think if it's a lesson, I would leave to sales comfort. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
you have to be very, very customer service oriented. This is not a role or a group where you will get accolades. People will not be running to thank you.
Yeah.
They
It's a
will.
thankless job.
It is very much a thankless job, unfortunately, and a lot of back office jobs are, okay? But comp is even more so, and when people are reaching out, it's usually because of some issue, and we all know that, we accept that, that's part of our job. But for myself, as I said, I take a lot of satisfaction in the fact that once I do my job and I help address things, you know, I can see the impact. If something was calculated incorrectly, because as I said, the CRM data was incorrect, I make the adjustments. I know that I'm helping them. I'm hopefully helping them be able to now pay for their rent or something like that. I take a lot of satisfaction in that. But as I said, it is very much a thankless job. You work very long hours sometimes, and people just have to kind of accept that that's the type of job you're signing yourself in for. So if that's something you like, well, maybe not like is the right word, but if that's something that you would find or take a lot of pride in and satisfaction from, then this could be something that would be good for you. When it comes to RevOps, I would probably say just overall, when it comes to RevOps, obviously we work so close with them, you know, and I would say overall with RevOps, they have to kind of always make sure they see the overall picture. Things that they are trying to drive or trying to orchestrate, who's impacted and how can they make sure everybody's involved, not later, but as soon as needed. That to me is one of the key obstacles sometimes that companies have to deal with is like, okay, sales comp. Yeah, we need you to just do this. We're like, uh, what? Okay, we don't have we're brought in a little late sometimes, and that could be an issue. And again, that's just all about trying to make sure communication is upfront with our business partners.
Perfect. I think that's a great wrap to this episode as well. And thanks for sharing your insights, Wayne. And well, that brings us to the end of this insightful episode of Go to Masters podcast series. Big thanks to Wayne for sharing his experience and valuable insights. Remember, folks, you can tune in every week to learn more from game changers driving hypergrowth companies across the globe. Go to Masters is brought to you by Everstage, your trusted partner for transforming the way businesses handle sales compensation. I'm your host, Anirudh, signing off. Thank you.